When the first half of Twilight Masquerade launched in Japan, it looked like Iron Thorns EX would be a massive threat in Standard. But then Dragapult EX and Greninja EX came out, ruining everything. Still, Iron Thorns looks to at least be annoying to play against, especially if you're Lugia or Gardevoir. Evoking memories of Path to the Peak, Iron Thorns EX's ability, Initialization, shuts off all Rulebox Pokemon abilities as long as it's in the active spot, except for future Pokemon. So you'll still have to worry about Iron Crown EX boosting Miraidon and Iron Hands EX, making it a fairly tough matchup for you. But every other Rulebox Pokemon is fair game. This means that if you have an Iron Thorns in the active, the following Pokemon don't have access to their ability. Charizard EX, Pidgeot EX, Radiant Greninja, Radiant Charizard, Lugia V-Star, Gardevoir EX, Lumineon V, Rotom V, Arceus V-Star, Golden Go EX, Mew EX, Squawkabilly EX, and Chien-Pao EX. Just remember that it doesn't shut off non-Rulebox Pokemon, so something like Baxcalibur will still have access to its ability. Same with things like Bibarel, Comfey, and Cramorant. But how effective is Iron Thorns going to be really? In terms of good matchups, it auto-wins against Lugia V-Star. They can't use Summoning Star to put Archeops into play, so unless they're manually attaching energy every turn to a Cinccino and you never find your energy, you win. Not even Blood Moon Ursaluna can save them, as its ability is what enables the free attack. It's a similar story with Gardevoir EX. They can't ever use Psychic Embrace, and their whole strategy relies on damaging their own Pokemon and accelerating energy, so that's another auto-win. Unless, of course, they're able to triple attach to a Gardevoir EX and two-shot 3 different Iron Thorns. Okay, I know some of the Lugia and Gardevoir players watching this are already fingering their keyboards ready to tell me the counter to Iron Thorns, but I'll talk about that in a minute. For now, let's look at all of the Rulebox Pokemon abilities in Charizard EX. There's Rotom V, Radiant Charizard, Pidgeot EX, and Charizard itself. The deck loses all of them, meaning they can't accelerate energy from the deck. So in this matchup, the Zard player has to either run a copy of Canceling Cologne, unlikely, or manually attach 2 fire energy to a Charmander, Charmeleon, or Charizard in order to attack. That's not what their deck is built to do. However, Iron Thorns only does 140 damage, meaning you 3-shot a Zard. I may suck at math, but even I know that's not very good. In order to deal with this, you run Crushing Hammer. If you don't already have a horseshoe stuck up your butt, I recommend putting one in there before playing Crushing Hammer. If you're able to hit their attached energy a couple of times, or KO whoever they attach to, there's nothing Charizard can really do. But if you flip Tails on Crushing Hammer, or they evolve into Charizard EX and are able to manually attach to it twice after you've taken 2 prizes, you just kinda lose. Basically, if they get a Charizard EX online and attacking when you're at 4 prizes or fewer, they one-shot you while you have to 3-shot them. Yeah, not great. That's why Iron Thorns is also running De-Evolution and Airy. Airy discards their Rare Candy and Super Rod, De-Evolution sends a Charizard back down to a Charmeleon or Charmander. So Iron Thorns is essentially a 50% control deck and 50% an attacking deck. Like Hannah Montana, it's the best of both worlds. In terms of horrible matchups, it's anything big that doesn't rely on Rulebox Pokemon abilities. As I mentioned off the top, Greninja EX is awful and Dragapult EX isn't much better. Neither of them have abilities. Greninja can one-shot you, and Dragapult can set up easy KOs after their first attack. Chien-Pao also seems like it'd be tough, though they can't put energy into their hand with Chien-Pao's ability or draw cards with Radiant Greninjas. If you are looking for an easy way to counter Iron Thorns EX though, there are a few. Canceling Cologne is the most obvious, as it's an item searchable with Arven or Irida or Pokestop. On the Pokemon side, both Klefki and Fluttermane turn off Iron Thorns EX's ability. Fluttermane is definitely the better option, as Klefki shuts off every basic Pokemon's ability when it's in the active. Fluttermane simply shuts off your opponent's active Pokemon's ability while also having a decent attack that can be used in multiple different decks like Charizard, Gardevoir, and Lugia. So yes, if any of those 3 decks run the Fluttermane, they can use their abilities as long as Fluttermane's in the active. Lugia only needs to have the Fluttermane up in the active once to use Summoning Star, but Gardevoir will have to have it in the active every single time it wants to use Psychic Embrace. Charizard can also get by with just a single Fluttermane turn, though they will have to worry about De-Evolution. Another issue Iron Thorns EX players will likely run into is attaching energy. It attacks for a Lightning and 2 colorless, which isn't bad, but if you attack, you have to send an energy to someone on the bench. The way most Japanese players have gone about it is by running a copy or 2 of TM Turbo Energize. You can find it with Arven, and it allows you to attach up to 2 basic energy and attach them to your bench Pokemon however you want. Here's the best Japanese Iron Thorns list I could find. Finishing in 4th place, it runs 4 copies of Iron Thorns EX and nobody else. You could do some mulligan shenanigans with Hand Trimmer, but that's more cute than anything. And early Arven will be for Earthen Vessel or Energy Lotto plus Turbo Energize, while late Arvens will be for Crushing Hammer and Future Booster to give Iron Thorns free retreat while also boosting its damage to 160. You can also use Arven to find Prime Catcher, the A-spec of choice, as it allows you to switch and gust. Unfair Stamp isn't as good for Iron Thorns because they might not take a knockout for several turns. Besides, Judge and Iono keep their hand size low, Penny brings up any damaged Iron Thorns to annoy your opponent, Airy discards their items from hand, and Pokegear helps you find supporters. Don't worry about the selfie stick. That isn't coming out in Twilight Masquerade and it's basically just a weaker Pokegear. But there is Handheld Fan. Not necessary by any means, but still interesting. If your Iron Thorns gets hit by an attack, you move an energy from their active to one of their bench Pokemon. So if they do manage to get a Charizard EX built up, you can send one of those precious energy onto a Bibarel or a Pidgeot. Another list I found runs Calamitous Wasteland, which increases the retreat cost of basic Pokemon by 1, as well as 2 copies of Canceling Cologne, which is solely to shut off Mimikyu's ability. Alternate ways to play Iron Thorns EX are to just chuck a few copies in a Future Box list. Yes, the attack's base power is low, but when you have 3 Iron Crown EX in play, all of a sudden Volt Cyclone is dealing 200 damage. You can even get it up to 240 with 4 Iron Crown in play and a Future Booster attached to Iron Thorns. And at the same time, your opponent's Rulebox Pokemon won't have any abilities. The downside to this version is that they can use Boss's Orders or Counter Catcher or Prime Catcher to switch in somebody from your bench, re-enabling their abilities. But the added benefit is that energy acceleration is much easier thanks to Miraidon. And Iron Thorns can use Heavy Baton just like Iron Hands. The future version of Iron Thorns will definitely need some testing and fine-tuning, but I do expect it to be quite annoying, especially if you unfair stamp them to 2 on turn 2 after they KO a Miraidon. To quickly recap, Iron Thorns EX auto wins against Lugia V-Star and Gardevoir EX if they don't have Flutter Mane. It makes Charizard EX players ride the struggle bus and loses to Dragapult EX and Greninja EX. Stay tuned for lots more Twilight Masquerade coverage throughout the month of May, and be sure to follow me on Twitch where I'll be streaming the new decks beginning on Thursday, May 23rd.